The storm had rolled in with a vengeance, sweeping across the city with howling winds and torrents of rain that blurred the night into shades of gray. Street lights flickered under the assault of the downpour, their golden glow struggling to pierce the curtain of water. The trees swayed violently, their branches groaning under the weight of the storm, and the grand estate of Daniel Harrow, one of the city's wealthiest and most private millionaires, stood like an island of light in the storm's fury. The mansion loomed at the end of the long cobblestone driveway, its wide windows glowing warm and golden. For most it was a symbol of untouchable privilege, a life beyond imagination. Inside, marble floors gleamed, crystal chandeliers sparkled, and the scent of rich mahogany lingered in the air. Daniel Harrow had built this life from the ground up. Every polished surface, every lush carpet, every shining trophy on his shelves reminded him of decades of relentless work, sacrifice and ruthless decisions. He was a man who had outlasted failure, conquered competitors, and turned obstacles into stepping stones toward his empire. But outside those gilded walls, reality told another story. Near the entrance gate, half hidden beneath the shadow of an ancient oak tree, two frail figures sat collapsed against each other. The rain poured over them mercilessly, soaking their worn clothes until they clung to their thin frames. Their hair streaked with gray and plastered to their heads dripped with water. Their skin was pale and trembling under the cold. An old leather suitcase, frayed at the seams and covered in mud, lay toppled on its side, its contents scattered across the ground. A few faded photographs, their edges curled with age, clung to the wet earth. A child's drawing, barely legible through the rain, flapped weakly in the wind. They looked like shadows of a past life, fragile and forgotten, an elderly couple, their hands still clasped together even in their exhaustion, as if their grip was the only thing tethering them to the world. Daniel's sleek black car slid through the iron gates, its headlights sweeping across the scene. He sat in the back seat, scrolling through his phone, oblivious to the storm outside. But then the car slowed, his driver murmuring something under his breath. Daniel looked up, irritated at the delay, only to feel his breath catch in his throat. The headlights revealed the figures by the tree. For a moment Daniel thought they were statues, something grotesque left on the lawn, but as the light steadied, he saw the truth. The frailty of their bodies, the sagging lines of their faces, the desperate rise and fall of their chests. They weren't statues, they were people. "Stop the car," Daniel said sharply. The driver hesitated. "Sir, it's raining heavily." "Stop the car," Daniel repeated, his voice like a blade. The car screeched to a halt. Daniel pushed open the door, and the storm swallowed him instantly. His polished shoes splashed into the puddles, his tailored suit soaking through in seconds. The cold bit into his skin, and yet he couldn't look away. He stepped closer, his eyes locked on the fragile couple slumped against each other. The woman's head rested on the man's shoulder, her lips slightly parted as though she no longer had the strength to speak. The man leaned against the tree, his chest rising and falling with shallow, labored breaths. Their hands were still intertwined, trembling but unwilling to let go. Daniel froze. For all his fortune, all his iron discipline, he had never stood so close to such raw desperation. He had seen poverty in passing, on news reports, in the brief flashes of beggars on busy streets, but it had always been distant, something he could turn away from. This was different. This was at his doorstep. A memory clawed its way to the surface. A boy sitting in a leaky apartment, the rain dripping through the ceiling, his mother working 2 jobs, his father collapsing after 12-hour shifts, a boy who once knew the taste of hunger, the sting of worn-out shoes, the shame of being turned away. Daniel had buried those memories beneath layers of wealth and power, but tonight the storm tore them free. The old suitcase caught his eye again. Papers and letters soaked through, the ink smudged into blue streaks. He knelt, picking one up carefully. It was a photograph, a younger version of the couple, smiling, holding a baby wrapped in a blanket. Their eyes were filled with hope, the kind of hope that time and hardship had stolen. The image shook him. It could have been his own parents in another life, if fate had not carved a different path. "Who are they?" Daniel asked quietly. The driver shrugged, uncomfortable. "Don't know, sir. Strangers, may be homeless. Should I call someone?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. The rain pounded around them, thunder rumbling in the distance. His chest tightened as he looked at the couple again. They had once been like anyone else, dreamers, builders, parents. Now they were reduced to this, sitting in the storm, unseen, unwanted, forgotten. He remembered his mother's words from years ago. "Never forget where you came from, Danny, because the day you do, you lose who you are." Daniel swallowed hard. For years he had prided himself on being untouchable, on keeping his heart guarded behind the walls of his mansion. But tonight, under the merciless storm, those walls cracked. He stepped closer, crouched down and reached for the man's shoulder. "Sir," he said softly. The man stirred faintly, his eyes blinking open in confusion. The woman's grip on his hand tightened, as though she feared he might slip away. Daniel felt something stir deep inside him, a tremor he hadn't felt in decades. Compassion, fear, recognition. "Get blankets." Daniel ordered his driver, his voice shaking. "And hot drinks, now." The driver hesitated again, but Daniel's glare left no room for argument. As the man hurried back to the car, Daniel remained crouched, his expensive suit soaking through, his heart pounding. He looked at the couple again and realized something that chilled him more than the rain. This could have been his parents. And if life had been just a little less forgiving, it could one day be him. Daniel's driver returned moments later, clutching 2 thick wool blankets and a thermos of steaming tea pulled from the car's emergency kit. His hands shook, whether from the cold or from the urgency in his employer's voice, Daniel couldn't tell. Daniel draped one blanket over the frail woman's shoulders, the other over the man. The fabric grew heavy with rain almost instantly, but it was something, a barrier however thin, against the storm's cruelty. He lifted the thermos, unscrewing the cap with stiff fingers, and held it carefully to the man's lips. "Drink," he urged softly. The man's eyes flickered again. He let out a faint cough before swallowing a few sips, the heat of the liquid breaking through his trembling body. His wife stirred as well, her weak murmur almost drowned by the wind. Daniel steadied her hand on the cup, helping her take a sip. Her lips quivered, then relaxed slightly, as if warmth had finally touched her soul. For the first time in years, Daniel felt utterly powerless. He could command entire corporations, bend markets to his will, but here, kneeling in the mud with an elderly couple fighting for breath, he realized just how fragile life was. The storm raged on, lightning splitting the sky, yet in Daniel's heart something gentler was beginning to grow. "Sir," the driver whispered, "maybe we should call the authorities, or an ambulance." Daniel glanced at the couple again. Their breaths had steadied slightly, but exhaustion etched deep lines into their faces. He shook his head. "No, not yet, help me get them inside." The driver hesitated, then nodded. Together, they lifted the couple with careful hands. Daniel slipped his arm beneath the man's frail shoulders, feeling the brittle bones beneath the soaked fabric. The woman clung tightly to her husband, refusing to be separated even as they moved. Step by step they guided the couple up the driveway, past the towering iron gates, and toward the mansion that had always symbolized distance from suffering. But tonight, it became a refuge. As they entered the grand foyer, the warmth of the house enveloped them. The chandelier sparkled above, the marble floors gleamed, and the scent of polished wood filled the air. Yet none of that mattered to Daniel. The only thing that mattered was the shallow rise and fall of the couple's chests as they were lowered gently onto a plush sofa near the fireplace. "Get the doctor," Daniel instructed. "Immediately." The driver hurried away, his phone already pressed to his ear. Daniel crouched once more, pulling the blankets tighter around the couple. Flames flickered in the fireplace, casting a golden glow on their damp faces. The woman's eyes fluttered open, and for the first time Daniel met her gaze. They were soft eyes though clouded with age, eyes that had seen decades of hardship, of love and loss, of building and losing. She whispered something, her voice fragile as the crack of dry leaves. "What? Home?" Daniel leaned closer. "You're safe. You're inside now. Rest." Her lips curved into the faintest smile before exhaustion pulled her eyelids shut again. The man stirred, his voice rough and broken. "Thank you." 2 simple words, yet they pierced Daniel's heart more deeply than any speech he had heard in boardrooms or banquets. He swallowed hard, fighting the lump in his throat. "You're welcome," he whispered, though his voice cracked with emotion. The hours that followed blurred into a strange mix of urgency and silence. The doctor arrived quickly, summoned by Daniel's connections. He checked pulses, listened to lungs, and gave instructions in clipped tones. Dehydration, malnutrition, exhaustion, nothing irreversible, but dangerous if left unchecked. Rest, fluids, warmth, that was the prescription. Daniel hovered nearby, unwilling to step away. He studied their faces, the deep lines carved by years of hardship. The old suitcase sat on the floor, its contents now drying near the fireplace. Daniel bent down and sifted gently through them. Photographs, letters, little tokens of a family long past. He lingered on one photo, a young boy standing between the couple, smiling wide with missing teeth. His clothes were patched, his shoes scuffed, but his grin was radiant. Daniel's chest tightened. Where was that boy now? Why weren't there children here in this moment of need? The doctor finished his work and turned to Daniel. "They'll recover with care, but they're weak. They've been living without proper shelter for too long." Daniel nodded, though his thoughts raced. His mansion was filled with rooms, unused, untouched, preserved more for prestige than necessity. And yet here were 2 human beings who had nowhere to go. He felt shame creep over him, heavier than the storm outside. After the doctor left, Daniel remained by the fire. The rain softened against the windows, its relentless rhythm now a muted backdrop. The couple slept, their hands still entwined. Daniel studied them quietly, and in their fragile embrace he saw something he had lost along his own path. Tenderness. He thought of his own brother, Andrew. They hadn't spoken in years, not since a bitter fight over their parents' inheritance. Daniel had chosen wealth, ambition and victory. Andrew had chosen silence. The distance between them had grown wider than any storm. And now, looking at the couple before him, Daniel wondered if one day he too would sit forgotten, clutching only memories while the world passed him by. The question burned in his mind. What is the worth of wealth if it cannot shield you from loneliness? Hours passed, the storm easing into a drizzle. The elderly woman stirred first, her eyes opening to the glow of the fire. She looked around the grand room, confusion clouding her face. Then her gaze fell on Daniel, seated across from her. "Where are we?" she asked softly. "You're safe," Daniel replied. "My name is Daniel Harrow. This is my home." The man shifted beside her, murmuring her name, Martha. She clasped his hand tighter. He opened his eyes slowly, meeting Daniel's gaze. "Henry," Daniel said gently, as if naming him gave weight to his presence. "That's your name, isn't it?" The man nodded faintly. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Yes, Henry, and this is my Martha." Daniel felt the words settle heavy in the room. They weren't just strangers anymore. They were Henry and Martha, two souls with histories, memories and stories that deserved to be heard. "Tell me," Daniel urged quietly, "what happened? How did you end up here?" Henry's eyes glistened with unshed tears. His voice trembled as he spoke, each word carrying the weight of years. We lost our home, couldn't keep up with the payments. Our children, they're gone, moved away. No one left to help. We walked until we couldn't anymore." Martha squeezed his hand, her lips quivering. "We only had the suitcase, memories of what we once had. The suitcase, the photographs, the letters." Daniel's eyes drifted to the pile drying by the fire. His chest ached as he realized the depth of their loss. They weren't just homeless, they were forgotten. Silence hung in the room, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Daniel leaned back, staring into the flames. In them he saw not just Henry and Martha's pain, but his own reflection, his ambition, his choices, his estrangement from family. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel Harrow questioned everything he had built.